there's probably like 10 blog posts that matter the most if you're going to do a startup. One of them is the Paul Graham essay, Do Things That Don't Scale, where he's talking about with Airbnb early on. And if you're kind of in the startup world, just fast forward 30 seconds. But if you're not, you'll like the story if you haven't heard it. So Airbnb is in Y Combinator. They're struggling. Airbnb is not really working. They have like, I don't know, 20 customers or something low. And they go into Paul Graham's office. He's the advisor from Y Combinator. And he's like, okay, so tell me how it's going. And they're like, well, it's small and not really growing. And he's like, okay, but tell me, what have you learned from your customers? You've been out there. What did you learn? And they're like, well, most of our customers are in New York and they're putting their apartments up. He's like, they're in New York? They're like, yeah. Like, most of your customers are in New York? He's like, yeah. He's like, what are you doing here? Like, go to New York. You need to go to New York now. And like, why are you in San Francisco if your customers are in New York? So he sent them over there. And what they did, which is something that nobody else was doing, was if you ever saw an apartment listing before, the photos looked like shit because it would be somebody on their crappy mobile phone at that time taking a photo of a dirty apartment and listing it for rent. And so it was like the worst sales pitch. And so they started themselves going in. They said, hey, can we they would tell their customers, hey, we want to do professional photos of your place. It increases bookings by 40%. Are you open to that? And then they would show up as the professional photographer and be like, hey, by the way, I'm the founder. And they would take photos, and that Airbnb listing started to look great. And everyone told them this won't scale, and they also thought this won't scale. And to an extent, it did, because even now today, there's a sort of fleet of photographers that will come and take photos of your place to list it because it was just that important, and they found a way to make it scale.
I think that's a great story. Another thing that shocks people is I think even if you have hundreds of thousands of users, maybe as high as millions, you could really I've done this with us. I will just call and talk. I only need to talk to about 10 people,
right?
And I can see the pattern that represents tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people,
right?
You could just tell. So like what you could do is A/B test shit and wait. If you're just starting, it's not gonna be significant, and that could work fine. If you just call 10 people, you really get the information you need.
Totally. I was talking to Emmett. So Emmett's the CEO of Twitch, where I'm working, and being at a big company has all these different weird things that aren't really related to my core interest, which is startups. So I ask Emmett all the time, just tell me about the early days. And so I asked him, I said, hey, when you guys were pivoting from Justin TV to Twitch, was that obvious? He's like, no, dude, at Justin TV, like less than 2% of the watch time was on video games. It wasn't obvious that this was the thing to do. He's like, I just liked it, and I thought there was an option. And he goes, and then I talked to a bunch of customers, and I said, do you have your notes from that? And he's like, yeah, I do. And so he sent me his notes from the initial conversations he had with all these streamers, all these customers.
Can we publish those?
No, probably not. But I was reading through them, and it was fascinating. So first lesson was just go ask the founder or CEO about the early days. I bet you they have a bunch of resources that are awesome. Like he sent me the old pitch decks and stuff like that. I think I sent you one slide, which was my favorite slide. The title of the slide, because it was a progress update for their early investors.
Yeah,
and it just said, we're like a bulldozer in a field full of flowers. And then it was a list of all the shit they got done that month. And I was like, this attitude, like if I said that today at Twitch, it would be like, what is this maniac saying? Like, why is your slide so aggressive? But that's how they were early on. So then he had all these notes of his customer conversations. And he always tells everybody at Twitch, he's like, go talk to people. By the 6th conversation, you'll hear the same thing over and over again. It takes 6 phone calls basically to figure out the pattern. And by the 6th one, you'll know. And you won't even want to do 50 conversations. You'll be like, all right, I can predict what this person's going to say before they even say it after 6.
That's awesome. I think we just got ourselves another clip.
Clip it.
What do you want to first of all, share that deck with me again, and also ask him if we can make that public.
Yeah, I will ask him, actually, because it's pretty cool.
What do you want to do?
The one thing I can share out of that, by the way, he asked 3 questions. He's like, I said, customer interviews, is there a whole skill set to learn? He goes, no, dude, I asked 3 questions. I said, what do you like about your current platform? What do you dislike about your current platform? And what will it take to get you to switch to Twitch? And that's what he asked every single customer. And then he just heard the common things, and he would build it, and he'd go back to me and said, you told me this is what it would take for you to switch. 2 weeks later, here it is. Are you ready? And then sometimes they're like, no, still. He's like, okay, cool. What's next? And he would just like keep doing that. 3 questions.
That's badass. Just to wrap that up, if you want to learn about this stuff, I think the best book I've ever read on this is called The Mom Test.
Yeah, I love that. Jack recommended me that book.
Yep.
It's fantastic.
Too. It's the best thing.
Tiny book, too. Like,
it's a long blog post.
50 pages or something.
That book, in terms of your business life, it might change.
Yeah, The Mom Test.